Can you walk us through how OffDeal uses AI, how you use it to identify potential buyers, sellers? Is that right? How you're using it?
We use it throughout the entire stack, and I'll break some of this down for you. If we take a step back, whenever it comes to deal origination, right, whether you're on the sell side or the buy side, your effort's going to be as good as your list. Who are you reaching out to? Like, that's the top of the funnel. So when we started building OffDeal, the first brick that we laid was a database of businesses. And as a former user of Grata and PitchBook and all these other things, I already knew what some of the limitations were. What we've done is we've assembled a data set based on publicly available and licensed data of 2 million businesses. Where does the number 2 come from? 2 million is roughly the number of companies in the United States that have more than $500,000 in revenue and less than $100 million in revenue. That is the sweet spot for us. And maybe if we're being honest, it's probably to the middle, low end of that range. But generally, that is what we see as our sandbox.
Sorry, above 500,000 and less than $1 million of revenue, or of? I thought you said revenue, right?
Revenue.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, right, if you quickly do the math, there's 33 million small businesses in the United States.
Right.
And so if only 2 million of them are within our sandbox, and then if you squint your eyes, maybe it's, even 1 million is the real number, once you take out the super small ones and super large ones, that means that roughly 1 out of 30 businesses are sellable in the lower middle market space.
And sorry, your assessment of like what a sellable business is. So so you said 500,000 to $1 million.
$100 million.
Sorry, to $100 million in revenue.
Yes.
That's why I was missing you, right?
Yeah.
So 500,000 to 100 million in revenue. There's roughly 2 million businesses, and you said maybe even closer to 1 million businesses out of the 33 million in the US that fall into that category of what you'd consider sellable businesses, or at least representable by an OffDeal of the world.
Yes. And of course, there's a lot more that goes into whether something is sellable, but that's like a quick proxy for that.
Of course.
And by the way, just as a quick jab at the data vendors, if you go on their websites, you'll see crazy numbers of like, we have 300 million data points and 200 million. There's just not enough targets there, right? To have that data. So either you're including global data or duplicate data on multiple decision makers within a community.
That's what always surprises me, right? Because you see some of these and they'll say like, we have 100 million, companies in our database. And I'm like, where are you getting 100 million? Like it, especially for majority of private equity, given Europe is growing in its own way, but like the majority of the focus being US and Canada, right? Like to your point, 33, I think is it 33.5 million? That's the number I always use of like, small businesses in the US.
18 million of them are sole proprietorships. So. But anyway, so we started with building this data set, and that's the first place where we've extensively used large language models. We saw that the existing data vendors had very patchy data on companies, and probably the first line of attack is, okay, well, what does this business actually do, right? What do they sell? To whom? What is the business model? And the traditional methods usually, rely on industry codes on the worst end of the spectrum, and hopefully some keywords on the top end of the spectrum. But the keywords really, pre-large language model world, it's just you look at words that are most frequently used. Like there were scripts that you could run on a website. It
was a traditional like TF-IDF sort of thing, right? Where you just go and find like, here's the keywords that are different in this document versus others, right?
That's right. And so we thought, okay, well, if I had all the time in the world and I manually went on every single website, what are the 4 or 5 things I would be looking at on each company, right? And then we figured out how to build an AI agent that can replicate that work. And so when I say AI agent, what I mean is it's a piece of software that can reason qualitatively and analytically and review its own work. So for every company, we want to learn what are all the products and services that they offer, what are the end customers that they serve. We might look at things that like, is it a franchise? Is it woman-owned business? Is it a veteran-owned business? There's a few kind of checklist things that we want to review. And so our AI agent will physically navigate to the website, look around different pages, searching for that information. It will analyze whether or not that question was answered, and what by the time it's happy with the information that it got, it will move on to the next business. And we do that, 2 million times effectively. So that was the first huge unlock, right? When you can have this literally an analyst going through each company's website and meticulously cataloging everything that they do. There's a lot of engineering complexity that comes with that, but the end product is that we have this beautiful data set that has structured and semi-structured data on every single business that we care about. And then the second problem that immediately we identified after we had that data set is how do you surface the right companies out of that data set? You would think that search is a solved problem. We all use Google search. We all use Control F.
Yeah.
It is an absolute rabbit hole. And probably one of the technologically hardest things that we had to figure out is to build our own recommendation engines that can understand what we mean when we say home services, or what we mean when we say building services, or facility maintenance or something like that. And so that is the second time now we're using AI. Now, that's not using large language models. It's using something that's called embedding models. Effectively, what that allows us to do is use conceptual understanding of a search query and being able to surface the similar companies based on that search. So I don't have to list out every way you can say pest control to get a list of pest control
Right.
companies.